Right, awesome. Hello, thanks for coming. It's all right. Right, so first question is, we'll start with the basics. So do you follow a particular religion?
Yeah, I'm a Hindu, so I follow Hinduism.
So first off, can I just get a clarification? Do you follow any religious beliefs?
No, not really, no.
Yes, so I'm a follower of Sikhism.
I consider myself a follower of Islam.
I am a Christian, and specifically I am a Baptist, which is a branch of Protestant Christianity.
Okay, and what distinguishes baptism from sort of other branches?
So Baptists in particular believe in adult baptism rather than child baptism.
Sikhism isn't supposed to have this caste type thing, so we're all supposed to be equal.
Would be a Brahmin,
Okay.
and that just means that I'm vegetarian.
So I would be in the Sunni category, and then under that there's a few more subdivisions, and you'll probably find me under Hanafism.
So how does this sort of affect your day-to-day life, first of all?
No. It's like, to really understand how it affects my daily life, I'd have to not be religious and then like compare it properly.
Okay.
But like, just from objectively, I guess like I pray obviously 5 times a day. So
Well, obviously, like the way I look, the turban, the long hair.
On a day-to-day basis, I'll pray a bit, I'll read the Bible.
If I can show, I have like a string. It's hard to show it now, but
Okay.
it's like a sort of a symbol of my particular section of the religion, and essentially that involves just doing a couple of prayers every day.
I would probably know more languages because of my religion.
Just be a good person and follow the way of Jesus. So I abstain from swearing more than other people, abstain from sort of sexual promiscuity, that sort of thing.
Do you base any of your sort of moral or religious decisions on those of religions? Do you maybe think religions have influenced your morals?
I think like culturally they do, for like everyone, don't they? Because I guess a lot of what is ingrained in our culture as being right or wrong comes from like religion.
I think definitely as a kid, a lot of what I felt came mainly through my parents, and so obviously their religious views would have like shaped my entire moral code really. But as I've got older, I've made decisions myself.
I think that they sort of the religion is more. I think it's sort of about peace and also just sort of. I find that Hinduism is it's sort of like a way of life, not just sort of like a religion. So it's not sort of I follow the rules just for the sake of them. I just feel that it's a way of living.
The main thing is about honesty and integrity, and always making sure you do like the right thing.
Where do you think Christianity got its morals from?
Sort of the idea like that we agreed to things that were morally acceptable and morally unacceptable because they're the things that sort of benefit us as a group to survive.
I'm going to put forward to you some controversial topics or some topics that there might be some questions about, and if you could just give me your opinion. Contraception. What are your views on the use of contraception?
I'm perfectly fine.
And does that come from
acceptable.
you or your religion? Is there anything specific about that in Hinduism?
I don't think there's anything like prohibiting it.
For me, contraception is generally a good idea, certainly like condoms or that sort of thing. That prevents unwanted babies, and that prevents abortion, which is always a good thing.
What about sort of the day after pill? Or
I don't believe that life necessarily begins right at conception, so the day after pill is also fine.
My personal views to contraception is I actually think it's okay. A lot of people would probably disagree with me. In terms of using them to prevent the birth of a child, I think sort of it would be nice to have a child and nice to love the child, but I also recognise, obviously children are expensive.
It's acceptable in my opinion.
can you qualify that?
I think like for me like sex is just it's not necessarily about creating a baby, is it? It's about other things as well.
In Sikhism, one of the main things is postmarital sex. Only, yeah, within a normal marriage. That's all fine. And contraception is okay.
What are your views on abortion?
I think that in the cases of, for example, rape, I think definitely abortion is acceptable. I think at the end of the day, I think I would lean towards more pro-choice, because at the end of the day, you want the quality of life for a child to be good as well.
Abortion is the termination of a fetus of age up to 24 weeks in the UK, because at 24 weeks, a child has a 50% chance of living if it was born at that point. So I would say at that stage, the child is undeniably a living human being, because it's not dependent on the mother. I don't believe that the mother should have the choice to kill another person. I would say if I was not a Christian, I would still recognise that a 24-week-old fetus is a living thing, for example. If you are intending to have some sort of abortion or morning after pill, it should be done as soon as possible.
I think it depends on the reason. Certainly some good reasons that abortion should be totally justified up to like fairly late on, not really late on, but if you're a victim of rape, you should be able to abort that, I think. I think if you've got something that's very seriously, a baby that's very seriously ill, then you should be able to abort that. There's definitely reasons which I think are wrong to abort. Like, I think if it's because you find out it's a female and you don't want a daughter, you want a son, that I think is wrong.
Do you think carelessness
I think
is an acceptable reason to get an abortion in terms of like contraception usage?
I think yes, but it should be a lesser. It should then be perhaps 6 weeks or whatever is the deadline.
It's better maybe for something to die and live than be born and live a terrible life. But then I do think people need to be more responsible if they're just if they just had like sex and then there's a baby like 24 weeks later and now they want to kill it. Like, should have probably done that a bit earlier.
Do you think the limit should be lower then? You think it should be earlier than 24 weeks? Or?
I don't think it should be earlier. Like, it can take a lot of time to realise like the severity of what's going on, and there's a lot of like emotional changes during a woman's pregnancy cycle, and I can see how that would affect them.
What do you think about sort of after the 24 weeks?
It depends what the reason is really, because I think you have to like look at individual cases rather than create like a blanket rule. If the mother's life is in danger, then you would save the child. Like, I'd rather a child died I'd never met than my sister died.
Our views on abortion are that it shouldn't really be happening. We believe that if a child has been conceived, that child has been, as in, written by God, and that's something He wants to happen.
So is abortion prohibited in Sikhism?
As far as I'm aware, there isn't anything specific. I think it's discouraged.
Do you take the view that an unborn child does still count as a person?
Yes.
At what point does a fetus become a person then? Because you mentioned that something like the morning after pill might be acceptable.
Obviously, we don't know when that is.
And is
but
that your
when the brain, I think, starts to develop.
Is that your personal view?
Personal view, yeah.
What are your thoughts on gay marriage?
Again, I have nothing against it.
So you think a marriage between two same-sex people could be endorsed as a Hindu marriage, not just as a bond necessarily, because
now this is more difficult.
Religious angle to it as well.
That's true. As a Hindu, I would say I know other Hindus, and myself included, that would support other people having a gay marriage. Now, I'm not sure if traditionally, for example, temple priests would be able to carry out a religion of such. I haven't really heard of one.
So what are your views on gay marriage?
I think it's fine. Like,
okay, do you think the church should be obliged to wed gay couples if that goes against their structure of religion and belief?
I'm not sure on that. The thing I don't really understand is if I was in a gay partnership with someone, and there's this church that said we really don't want to marry you, I don't understand why I would then still want to get married there. Like, personally, I'd be like, fine, I'll go find somewhere that will happily marry me.
Do you think it's an issue that these religious organisations get to decide who is married when marriage is a legal contract?
Well, I can't remember what they're called, but there's like a place you can go and get married in like a secular marriage, basically.
Right.
You can go like to a hotel and get married, legally, at least, I think. So a church should be able to say, this is our religion, our sort of like way of life. If you want to be a part of it, you should follow our rules. So I think it's probably okay for a church to deny someone getting married, to get a gay couple to get married, as long as there is a place that gay people can go to get married.
In terms of like issues like gay marriage, I prefer to support them as like legal rights rather than religious policies, if that makes sense. I think.
So you think there should be a separation between religious marriage and legal marriage? Yeah,
but it's not the law's duty to follow the view of every religion. The only issue I have with gay marriage is if someone says it's like halal, if it's like allowed. It's not, but like.
So Islam itself says that a marriage made between people of the same sex is not valid?
It's not allowed, yeah.
Okay.
So for people taking part in that, as long as they're aware that it's considered a sin, then I don't see a problem with that. Do you see what I'm... It's only a problem if people say, oh, it's completely allowed in my religion. It's not. But I don't have a problem with people being gay or having gay marriages. I just have a problem with them saying...
And you think it's valid for people to follow Islam and still sort of have gay relationships?
As long as they accept that, like, their belief thinks is wrong.
What are your thoughts on gay marriage?
That is something that is not, as I'm aware, against Sikhism. That's okay in Sikhism.
It's okay in Sikhism.
But there have been accounts of one person not being a Sikh, attempting to have a marriage in a Sikh temple with a Sikh, and then that marriage has not been allowed to go through. That's actually, there's a bit of a debate about that at the moment.
Marriage is a covenant made by God. By nature, a sacred bond between two people. So according to God in the Bible, a man shall not lie with a man as a man lies with a woman. So I do not believe that a gay marriage is an actual marriage as recognised by God. I'm perfectly fine with two gay people choosing to spend their life together in a civil partnership. But if they are to be married, then that's not a legitimate marriage in the eyes of God. If we're talking about something like adoption, I would believe that it's better for a child to be brought up in a traditional family rather than a family with gay parents. Because in the Bible, the family unit of a mother and father looking after their children is quite clearly defined, whereas two parents of the same gender do not provide the same sort of stable nuclear family.
Do you have any evidence for that, or are you assuming that because it's not mentioned in the Bible?
Yeah, so a child raised by two same-sex parents is far more likely to be bullied. I don't recall the actual figure, but it's very significantly higher. Marriage is a covenant performed by God, the Christian God, and I don't think that anyone other than God has the power to marry two people.
What do you think happens after you die?
My view on this is just, I don't know, and no one can know. So something might happen, something might not. It's not worth worrying about until it happens.
If you had to place bets,
I'd probably say it just stops. In
you
the same
think that's
sense,
most likely?
in the same sense as before you were born.
An afterlife, well, we actually believe in reincarnation, similar to the Hindu view. We believe that once you become a human, that is when you are closest to God. And once you're a human, if you follow the path of Sikhism, you can become one with God. We believe in a soul, and we believe that our soul, once you die and you become one with God as a human, you become one with God, and that breaks the cycle of reincarnation.
So in Hinduism, we have this theory, this idea of karma and reincarnation, and that building up good and bad karma will influence your next life. And also this idea that if you become enlightened, you can attain moksha, which means that you cease to be a human, you cease to be in this life, and you find a higher form of existence.
Okay. Does that suggest a tiering system amongst creatures? So, for example, some creatures are seen as higher tier than others.
As in, unfortunately, I think to an extent that can happen. I think that the way to view, for example, that's happened even with the caste system in India. That was a problem in terms of it could lead to, for example, there was a caste called the Dalits, were called untouchables, and they're human beings. And some people think that exactly. So that could lead to disrespect towards those people, and I think that's wrong. I mean,
what do you think about the fairness of that system? So, for example, somebody that does a bad deed in a previous life, their current self that had no control over that, then gets punished.
So that concept of no control. No, that's the thing that defines this.
So, do you think the soul has influence over what we do?
I think so. Yeah, that overall concept I think works. If you don't treat someone well, they probably won't treat you well either.
If they believed in Jesus Christ as their Lord and Saviour, then they will go to heaven. Heaven is a place where you are in the presence of God. In such a place, you can do nothing but praise Him, and that will fill you with such joy to be in the presence of such a perfect being.
And what about people that maybe haven't believed in Jesus Christ?
They will not go to heaven if they don't accept Jesus as their Saviour.
Okay, and is there an alternative to that?
I'm unsure if there is a hell or if it just ends. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yes, obviously no one knows. If you had to place your bets...
Yeah, I suppose I'd go for there being a hell.
Well, I believe that there's probably like a heaven and hell. There's probably like a judgment day too. Yeah, that's still in this one, yeah.
Okay, so tell us a bit about heaven and hell.
I don't know, there's like different stories going around that I've heard, but apparently there's like 7 levels to heaven, and like the higher the level, like the better person you are, really. I've heard that hell is like a place of punishment.
So what happens in terms of judgment?
My own personal opinion, based on what I've like read from the Quran, is that as long as you're genuine about sort of repenting for any sins you committed, God would forgive you.
Do you think your religion makes you happier?
I think yes. And sometimes when I'm worried about something, God is someone who I can give my worries to.
My lack of religion is just sort of the way I believe about things. Like, I don't think I couldn't be religious because I don't believe in it, right? If I was religious, I wouldn't be a happy person. I'd be probably more unhappy because I'd be like trying to follow something that I don't believe in.
So do you think your religion makes you happier?
I would say it makes me happier. I think the fact that it encourages you to look out for the little guy and also to, in some ways, be different to everybody else, I think that makes me happier. When you're a follower of religion, it's almost like you have like a set path that you're, like a goal that you're aiming towards, and you know why. You have
some decisions easier.
Yeah, makes some decisions easier, and it like gives you a direction.
I don't know. I don't really think it makes me a lot happier, or it makes me specifically sadder. So I don't really think it affects my happiness too much.
Do you think you've chosen to be a Baptist?
So that's going back to why I think Baptists have it right when it's about an adult choosing their own baptism rather than it being forced by the parents on them. So when I was 14, I experienced God's presence for myself, and I made my own decision to become a Christian at that point.
Do you think that choice was influenced by your upbringing?
So certainly I was given more opportunities to experience God by my upbringing, but I wouldn't say that I was just a Christian because my parents are a Christian, if that's the question.
I was born a Hindu, into a Hindu family.
And you chose to stay?
Yeah, I chose to stay.
And do you think your choice was influenced by your upbringing?
Yeah, I think I was raised a vegetarian, so I'm still a Brahmin to this day. I follow what a traditional Brahmin would do. Well, not traditional, because actually traditional Brahmins as such were meant to be temple priests, and we're not meant to sort of work in a traditional sense. So obviously times have changed since then. It's difficult to continue with that life, but I've maintained that.
So you think that's definitely been influenced by your family then?
Yeah, because I think if I was born in another family, I'd be... I don't think I'd be a Hindu if I was born in another family.
So what do you think's influenced your views on religion in terms of, maybe life experience or family or...
I guess a large part of it is I don't agree with any of the religions.
Do you think going to church actually put you off? Or...
Yeah, off Christianity, obviously. I think the others, I don't know what they teach, and so can't really agree with it.
I don't really think kids choose their religion, they just follow what their parents say.
I can see some truth in that.
So, for example, when I was 12, 13, I had a bit of a period where I wasn't very religious. But then after reading texts myself, I felt more of a connection with them, with Islamic texts than what my parents had ever taught me. So, in that sense, I can say that I've chosen my way.
And you found that yourself?
Yeah, if I hadn't been able to read Arabic, which I did taught as a child, I definitely probably wouldn't have been able to access Islamic texts and knowledges as well.
I don't think I personally chose to be a Sikh. I think I was reincarnated as a Sikh. If your family is Sikh, you'll be brought up as Sikh. But once you get to a certain age, if you don't want to be a Sikh, then that's your decision.
Do you think that choice was influenced by the fact that you've been brought up as a Sikh?
I think so.
What's your biggest criticism of atheism?
Some atheists, when they say discussing religion with people, they seem to make it out like they think religion shouldn't be a thing, or people shouldn't be allowed to follow religion. And that I think is quite, frustrating and annoying. I think people should be allowed to follow religion if they want to. They should be free to choose as long as it doesn't affect someone else, other people.
So the Baptist Church in particular is very democratic, and so a lot of the decisions are made by what the majority of the members thinks. And I don't believe that's necessarily the way to go about things, because there are moral absolute truths and absolute goods that are outlined in the Bible.
They are quite accepting of most things, but I do think that in areas such as same-sex marriage, and I think aspects such as that, I think as with other religions, I think it could be a bit more forward-thinking.
To be honest, the criticisms don't really come about as a result of the religion. It's more to do with people in India, especially, and they do it here, to be honest as well. There's quite a large divide between castes within Sikhism, even though it's something that is actively discouraged within the religion.
My biggest criticism of Islam, as with any religion, is I think, again, parents have too much of an influence on children, and maybe that's not a good thing. The other thing I would say is that, as with any religion, again, I think people have become they're not really searching for things themselves, and like I told you, the parents having a lot of influence, I think way too many people would just accept something that a religious scholar told them, be it a priest or an imam or something, and I think people aren't willing to question them enough.
And what do you think about the idea of an all-powerful, all-loving, all-knowing God?
Yeah, I see no contradiction in that statement, and I believe that God is all-powerful, all-loving and all-knowing.
How do you explain suffering in the world?
Through the free will argument, which says that God does not dictate what each of us does with every aspect of our lives.
So you think all suffering is caused by human choices to cause suffering to others?
Okay, so that's an interesting point. So let's say a child dies of malaria. I would essentially use the same argument. So in the book of Genesis, the first humans, Adam and Eve, make a choice to turn away from God and to be independent and to eat the apple offered by the devil to them. And in doing so, they chose to allow evil to enter the world. And so not only evil caused by us, but just evil in general.
Why should the child that dies of malaria pay for the actions of Eve?
It's not the actions of Adam and Eve specifically, it's the actions of humanity. We as a race have chosen to turn away from God. None of us are perfect. All of us are sinful.
What if the child that dies of malaria was a devout believer in God?
all of us are sinful, all humans are sinful.
Do you think that is helpful, or do you think that is perhaps discouraging?
Well, I think it's very important to recognise that we're all sinners and that we can do nothing about it.
If God is all powerful, why does it have to be a binary choice between free will and not suffering? Could he not make it such that we could have free will and not suffer, given that he's all powerful?
No, I would say that those two things are inherently a contradiction. If God were to force us all to be perfect, sinless individuals, and to force us all to honour him without it being a choice of our own, it would be meaningless.
So you're saying that God has to allow free will
in order for us to
allow
willingly
free
choose him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your explanation for suffering in the world?
The fact that humans have free will. At the end of the day, like, I have a lot of stuff. I have a lot of games consoles. I eat a lot of food. I have like various clothes. You see what I mean? Like, I could, if I wanted to, sell all my video games and donate them to a charity. But the point is, like, I think we as a human race could do more to challenge evil in the world, and we don't.
So you think if humans did more to try and combat evil,
Yeah.
that would help?
I don't know. I take the view now that God's maybe a bit more distant than previously, and I really think that it's up to humans to do things. So, like, natural disasters and diseases.
Right.
So I think, like, to some extent, there is a bit of truth in saying that evil is like a test, or like a demonstration of what good isn't, like the necessary contrast theory. I think that the initial presence of like natural disasters is to do with contrast.
Yeah.
But I think the reason the contrast is so stark nowadays is because of like human lack of action.
So obviously the typical Hindu explanation for that is karma.
Karma.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what goes on comes around. But my explanation is free will obviously is an argument. And to an extent that sort of makes sense in terms of God is being all loving and giving us the freedom to do what we want. But at the end of the day, it's up to us. Other arguments is necessary contrast, as in it shows what's good if there's evil. I don't think that's good. I think we'd still be able to appreciate the good things in life without there being murder.
Coming back to the bad karma type thing, if your karma is bad from previous lives, then that will translate into your human life. You're going to have to pay for your karma at some point anyway. I think most of that karma is paid for within your human life. As you talked about, your follows you through, and you obviously don't know about it.
Yeah.
But
So is that like fair in any way, in your opinion?
well, it's coming back to your point about you don't actually know what's gone on before you've
Do you
done
believe
all
the
those.
conscious beings are accountable for the actions of their souls, even though they cannot control the previous actions of their
Yes.
souls? And do you think that's fair?
Yes.
Can you explain why?
Well, it's kind of like I said earlier. It's going to have to, if you've done all those bad things in the past, it's going to come back to you at some point. It's not the same vessel. I get that. It's not the same body. It's
Well, I'm seeing someone who has no control over what their soul's previously done,
yep.
suffering for something that they have no control over. That to me is the definition of unfair.
Definition of unfair.
Well,
Even if it's the
it
same
fits
soul.
the definition. Yeah, suffering for something that you have no control over.
So what would you say where should that karma go? Should it just be wiped away?
I'm not necessarily criticising the system.
Yeah.
I'm asking whether you think the system is fair. And if it's not, then it's not. I mean,
I guess
move on to the next
it's
question.
not the most fair thing I've ever seen. Obviously,
Yeah, okay.
I'm not an advocate of
But you believe that's the way
suffering.
it is.
That is the way it is.
Yeah.
But that's not something that I would actively say, oh, you know, that people should suffer and all that sort of
Okay.
thing.
So I believe in the God that I worship because I've seen evidence of him working in other people's lives and in my lives, and I've felt his presence.
So what makes you think that your perception of God as it is to you is any more likely than any other perception of God, or no God, or like basically any other possibility?
I genuinely do think, the way I see the world and the teleological argument, I sort of do believe in that in terms of I don't see how this world can be so perfect for human life. And I feel like it does require some intelligent design, which is one of the reasons why I believe God exists.
I just think that, like, there's a lot of intricacies in life that are slightly too intricate and perfect to explain.
Okay, so
universal,
you think
like,
other
creator.
religions are following your God? Or you think your God takes the form of gods in other religions?
Well, I would say that we believe that they're all the same God.
What about moral practices that you might not agree with? For example, the slaughter of meat in a halal manner is, you know, as you mentioned, it's not the most humane way to kill an animal. How would you explain sort of God's introduction of that into the world?
Well, if it's specified in the Quran, then yeah, obviously, that is the word of God also. So, I don't know. I don't really have an answer for that question.
What do you think about God's existence?
I don't.
What's your primary reason for that?
I guess I just haven't really seen anything that would suggest to me that he does. I don't really have any reason to believe, so I think it makes sense to not believe.
Do you think that applies to other things, not just God?
For the most part, yeah, I think you should treat most things with scepticism unless there's evidence for it being a thing.
What about the argument that God is formless?
Well,
He shouldn't have to
it's
reveal
not so much he
himself
should
to
have to
you,
reveal
or it's in
himself.
his nature to not reveal himself to you.
Yeah, it's not so much God should reveal himself. It's that if you look at the world, I don't see things in the world that would say to me, oh, there must have been a God.
Do you think the world would be a better place if everyone shared your views voluntarily?
Yes, absolutely. Part of a Christian's mission is to spread the good news of Christ to everyone. Our work would be complete if everyone suddenly converted to Christianity.
Maybe. Not necessarily. Depends how you say follow my religion. If everyone just became Muslim overnight, I don't think that would necessarily solve all of the world's problems. It would definitely help some problems if everyone followed a common ideology, in the sense that there'd be less like disagreements and less.
It would cause some problems.
It might, in terms of like infighting and stuff, but I do think that overall, like there are some issues that are, as you said, like natural disasters and stuff. It wouldn't really help.
The problem of a better world, or the world not being in a good place, comes about, we believe, as a result of the human and not God, or the religion. So, for example, Islamic State. What their version of Islam is so different to what a typical Muslim would say is Islam.
Yeah.
Whereas Sikh, and it could be very well the same with if the whole world was Sikh, they could say, oh, well, this is Sikhism, and go blatantly around killing people.
Obviously, many of the problems we see today are due to religion. I mean, different religions contradicting each other. We've seen the rise of terrorism.
Yeah.
I mean, things like that. I do think potentially if we were all following one religion,
Yeah.
then maybe we could see that potentially it would be a better situation for us. But obviously, within that religion, there are many different so you have more liberal,
Subcategories
subcategories, more liberal.
Do you think there would still be disagreement?
I definitely think, definitely.
I think some of my beliefs, yes, some of them, no. I think if everyone shared my belief that like other people should just be able to believe what they want, as long as it doesn't affect other people, then that would make the world better.
Can you think of an example of something you believe that you think would make the world worse?
Not believing in a god, because like if you think about it, there's lots of like art and great songs and things like that that have all been inspired by like a belief in God.
What makes you think that the God that you believe in is any more likely as a cause of the universe than, literally any of the other sort of potentially infinite possibilities or things that could have caused the universe or set up the universe? What makes you think it's your version of a sentient or loving or knowing, caring God?
Because we believe that's the only thing that is the only being that could have done it, that there isn't anything else that could have done it.
So I've seen prophecies. I felt a peace wash over me when I listened to God. We've got things like people's lives being entirely turned around from them persecuting Christians to like being Christians. And I think each of those things, like I can't know what's going on in your life, but some certain people would be able to pray for you and like pray very specific prayers, knowing what's going on in your life, having never met you before. Things like that. I don't think those can be down to random chance.
And what are your thoughts on people that might openly criticise or be against Hinduism?
I'll just say they're entitled to their own opinion. Obviously, not everyone's going to agree with any religion. I don't agree with many things in Hinduism either. You shouldn't be too forceful with your own views, and you shouldn't then act on that, for example, terrorism, and try to inflict your views on other people.
I think it's the same as criticising a religion, isn't it? I don't have a problem with criticising atheism as like a concept, in the same way that I don't have a problem with someone criticising Christianity or any religion.
My thoughts on the criticisms of Islam, I think like everything has a right to be criticised. So there's like a lot of religious cartoons people publish regarding the Prophet. I mean, obviously I think they should be allowed, but I don't really take them as forms of criticism. I just think they're more like a mockery or trying to provoke a reaction. However, like people like Richard Dawkins, who have like gone through religious texts and said, actually, it said this, I disagree with that because I believe this and here's my evidence against that. I'm happy for criticism like that because it's a lot more structured and there's a lot more reason to it.
They're the people who don't believe in Christ, so they aren't going to go to heaven. I'm perfectly fine with them existing. I wish they would become Christians.
There's a lot of stigma about the Quran as sort of being full of sort of old-fashioned passages or passages that discriminate against women or are irrelevant. What would you say about that?
People have to remember that the Quran is revealed to the Prophet over a period of 40 years, and each time the Prophet is supposedly given a revelation, it's to do with the circumstance that he's in. There are some aspects of the Quran that I would say are only applicable during circumstances that match the circumstances they're revealed in. And so in that sense, yes, there would be passages that are a bit considered backwards, but they're only to do with those circumstances.
So you think they don't apply in a modern context?
They might if there was like another war. There's like
Is that made clear in the Quran that it's contextual?
it should be, because there's like titles of each chapter.
Okay.
But again, if you weren't a native Arab speaker, you would never know that. And again, you would have to also have a history of Islam as well, which isn't actually given in the Quran, because the history of Islam takes place after and during the events and the revelation of the Quran. So I think you're right, it doesn't actually make it too clear, but
There's people for whom religion basically dictates their life, and basically in a good way.
Do you think that's healthy?
Yeah, I think it's just having a strong belief in something and then using that to sort of guide your life. I don't see any real issue with that.
Even if you're not necessarily affecting other people negatively, do you think it's wise to believe in something so much that you're not willing to accept any counter-argument?
I think you should always be open to changing your beliefs if you can be, but at the end of the day, it's your choice. If you want to believe in something, even if it's completely wrong, as long as you don't hurt anyone else, I don't see any like a real issue with that. If you
Do you think about people
believe
hurting themselves with their beliefs or worldviews?
at the end of the day, it's their choice to do that.
I kind of cherry-picked the dodgiest quote I could find from the Quran, and it basically goes something like, "Fight those who do not believe in Allah."
I would say that was during the time of these religious wars, in which case, because most of the people at the time who were
So
persecuting...
it's just using those who do not believe in Allah, in quotation marks, it's using that as a general term to mean those who are persecuting you.
At that time, because
At that time.
there weren't very many monotheistic faiths in the Arabian Peninsula, so everyone who did oppose Islam would have been a paganist or pluralist, whatever you
Would not have believed in Allah.
Yeah.
How do you think that verse translates into modern society, if you like?
I would say that, like, don't take persecution. Like, obviously, if you're being persecuted for something you genuinely believe in, stand up for what you believe in.